Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show, part 4 of the review of 2018, and a rather popular song to begin with there. I got up off my knees and found out who I am and looked within. Much of this last review show will be about us and where we're going, where we've been. And many of you have followed that song, and particularly the third part of it, and that's what it's all about: finding out, getting off our knees, looking at ourselves, not outside of ourselves, and finding out who we really are. Once everyone on this planet finds out who we really are, all this nonsense ends. It's that simple. So I've gone through January through November, and December, last month of the year, started with quite a bang. December the 3rd brought us the Demons and Magic show. Now, it was all about where we heard about Solomon and how he ended up bounding the demons to the temple, and then subsequently being released back to source. So 3,000 years ago, when King Solomon walked the earth, he initially, I understand, was working directly for source, another teacher type. But he did something that went badly wrong, and it will also show another example of all magic comes with a price. We'd spoken about this in previous shows. Now, the temple he was building was not the first temple, which everyone refers to, but the second one. The first one was in Hyperborea, and suspected to be the lost continent of the Arya, which sank off the northern coast of Russia 110,000 years ago, when the second of the 3 moons we had here back then crashed into Midgard, which is the real name of this planet. Earth just means an inhabited planet. And that whole continent sank and was lost to his story, as we all know, and erased from our knowledge base until recently. And this is kind of why I get annoyed with the changing names of places like Netherlands from Holland, and we covered that in a recent show. It is how they delete and rewrite history going forward and erase the parts of history for future generations to get a grasp of. Russia was Rus, and is missing the region known as Tartaria, which was on all maps from 500 years ago, and yet too few on this planet have even heard of it now. Just erased from history. Now, during the building of the Second Temple, Solomon decided to use what we now call the demons to build it, and he was given a ring that worked magic. But he didn't believe in it, and he used a child to cast the spell that summons forth each spirit demon one by one. Now, for further details of the events and the roles and specific types of interference each demon exhibited and carried out, read the full text of the Testament of Solomon. It tells you what each demon was tasked to do, and it does interfere with our lives on all levels. So as each one was summoned forward, the ring was thrown at the chest of each demon, and that bound them to here, and Solomon put them to work to build the temple. This was, for us and future generations, a catastrophic mistake, and why I warn of the dangers of magic, light or dark. They both come with a price or consequences that are not conducive. And a warning for those that use magic, and a message: you are not performing the magic yourself. That's the illusion. You are calling in the dark spirits to do this for you. And once they're here, they wreak havoc on you and everybody else. Now, many of you have heard of the Ring of Solomon. It still exists and is worn by the Rothschilds at this time. No surprise there, is there? The Rothschildians. And quite frankly, I'm getting sick of speaking or hearing that name. And hopefully further hammers will banish them and speed their demise up in 2019. But whilst Rothschilds and their extended family network achieved wealth, assets and power, it all came at a very heavy price for them and their family members. A darkened soul, incapable of love or compassion. Essentially, the Rothschilds are Rumpelstiltskin. Now, we all need the dark. Yeah, many in the New Age, get rid of the dark, you don't need it. We do. They provide the lessons to those not following that path. But with the heavy swing of darkness here and other places throughout this universe, it was tilted way beyond balance. And it was rumoured that this universe was created by a source being who only wanted light. And if that is correct, that experiment failed badly. The dark came in with what is known as the fractal virus and began to corrupt everything. Other entities then took advantage, both humanoid and non-human looking, and the whole universe tilted badly to the dark in the region of 83%. Now, this is why I speak of the 45-55 balance, as a 5% correction either way can easily be fixed, but 33% in this case has taken many thousands, if not millions of years to correct. Those of the light need the dark to provide an opposite to enable you to recognize which path you are on. It's the dance of life, as we contain both the ability to be an angel and a demon. It's all about which path you choose, and it's only yours to make. But with this type of imbalance, it was more a case of the path open to you that looked all lovely and light, but was actually a seducement into the darkness. When in darkness, we all stumble around bumping into things, looking for the light switch or a slither of light to find your way around. If you go into the bathroom in the dark, in the mirror you'll see a shadow of you. But when you switch the light on, the shadow is integrated within you. And integrating that shadow aspect of you will determine your own path. It is key work for us all, along with the inner work. Ignore one or both and you stand in the dark, stumbling around, bumping into things, stepping on all kinds of things, banging your body into some cabinet. They are the externalization damage shown of what you're really doing to yourself internally. Now, internally, the damage manifests itself in anger, insecurity, frustration, repeated events happening to you, envy, narcissism, and projection towards others, in which you think you are highlighting their issues, but essentially you're highlighting your own. These traits all show a lack of integrated shadow work and a lack of inner trauma work on the self. The projection onto others is the mirror image of you in the dark bathroom. Now, the significance of this event 3,000 years ago is it created a covenant. And unlike some property covenants which last 10 years, this one carried a 3,000-year covenant which expired in the first week of December. So what were the conditions and the modes of operation that these demons brought forth? Well, it brought possessions of the vessel for a lot more people than many realise. And the conditions of modes of operation for these walk-ins to arrive in such vast numbers I decided to list them all and give you an example. Perhaps at the end of it, you'll realise it's far more prevalent than people realise. The first one is alcohol. They call it spirits for a reason. Now, genie is a more modern term for jinn, D-J-I-N-N. And who comes out of the bottle when it's rubbed? The genie or the jinn, which grants you 3 wishes. It's not wishes, it's magic, which they perform. Only you pay the price of soul possession in most cases. Drugs, pot, or other psychedelics are the second one. Now, the original Greek meaning of psychedelics is of breath, life, and soul. Soul being the operative word. Psyche being mind. Delix comes from the term delos, which means manifestation. So you have manifested something in your mind. The origin? From the spirit realm, Aka, the astral layer. That's what the drugs, pot and psychedelics do. And I can hear many going, no, no, no. But I'm sorry, this is exactly what those drugs do. And people wonder why people who take them change. Think about it. They've changed because in many cases it's not them anymore. The spirit demon has took over. Now many will argue it expands your consciousness. But have you considered the possibility it's not your consciousness that has expanded? It's you and the entity that has expanded. I can still hear many saying no, or that's BS, but they're the facts. Mushrooms, they call it magic mushrooms for a reason, and all magic comes with a price. Ayahuasca and other derivatives described as hallucinogenic, or is it hallucinogeny? You know how they like to change the letters. Again, it calls in the spirits, all done by so-called shamans. Shah really means time or era. So they are time men, except it's not our time, but theirs. Now the South Americans and many other tribal people were tricked into these ceremonies by rogue ET groups here in the past to engage a covenant or a contract that they had with the demons or the jinns here, whereby they do their magic and dirty deeds, which comes with no karma, as they have no physical form. Jinns get to inhabit vessels and also consume life force energy, both in here and also the astral realm. Most of the ancient tribes were taught the Kali Ma, who is the Dark Mother, Lilith. They all worshipped it, which spread right through most, if not all, early tribal groups here on this planet. They were also taught sacrifice ceremonies as well, all under the auspices of worshipping the gods, and in particular the Kali Ma. Tribal-based ceremonies involving circles, rhythmic beats to bring in their ancestors, except it wasn't their ancestors they were largely bringing in. 6. Witchcraft, Druidism and paganism, all involved in bringing in the demons, jinns or the dark spirits. Female witches congregated in a circle called covens, often with a pentagram, which is on Solomon's ring. The circle and the pentagram. Called in the spirits, and the circle they create is the portal, or the gateway to call them in, whilst the witches stand on the edge of the circle, all connected to each other by hand, which then binds the circle and opens the portal. Now, people may tell you that they are light witches and fully believe it, but in reality, you've been fooled and you are being seduced by the dark. Like I keep saying, all magic comes with a price. We have our own natural abilities. We do not need magic. 7. Then they got people praying to the Lord, who is Anu, the Draco Reptile King, which is an energy harvester, which again feeds those very entities, and it's all part of the pact that they made, or the covenant, with what we call the demons. All external praying is harvesting your energy. 8. Mediums and channelers, also call in the spirits, but they have no idea who or what they are calling in, or who or what they are contacting. A lot of those channeling stuff was technology that the Greys had, which is linked to an AI which records or copies, so you may think that you may be speaking to a loved one, and there are occasions when that takes place, but they have the technology to replicate. And that's why we warned back in Cosmic Voices the dangers of that. You have no idea what you're bringing in. 9. We had alchemists who created potions that, again, depending on what was mixed, called on the spirits to manifest, but they only manifest into another body. Magic potions, or is it magi potions, like earlier genic? When removing the C, it becomes genie, as in jinn. Magic without the C is magi. Now, the most famous magi is Sinbad. And who was he the owner of? 7 jinns. The genie in the bottle. Like alcohol is. Now, the original terminology for the word alcohol came from an Arabic term, a bit like Sinbad. Al-Kahul was the origin of alcohol. Al means like El, and Il means God, and Kul means ghoul, Ghoul, as spirit, which means you're, by consuming vast quantities of alcohol, you are calling in the spirit gods. Al-Kahul. 10. The Native Americans use a term Wetiko, which we covered in one show back in September, and that's a different type of walking. And for those of you who have read the Testaments of Solomon, you'll realise that this is possible, because they all have individual tasks. Wetiko, the meaning of it means solely for the self, but can only host a vessel on people who exhibit similar traits for greed, selfishness, and service to self, and excess. So if you're not one of those traits, you will not be inducing the Wetiko. 11. Then we had people at a later date who chose to sell their soul out for fame, wealth, and titles, oblivious to the real value of what they're giving away. Selling your soul is not metaphorical, it is literal. Selling of your soul and life force energy. which is why so many of the so-called famous people look blank, vacant, act strange, appear aloof, never seem happy, and life filled with drama to keep them and the walk-ins occupied. All theatre and all fakery. So perhaps having not believed it was possible to replace that many people with walk-ins, as we were talking about 85% possibility, it's only a theory. Perhaps now you having listened to that list, you may reconsider that possibility. Having absorbed that list, and also hopefully consider correcting some of your own lifestyle habits. Now, we then did a follow-up, and things had developed from that particular show, and the 3,000-year covenant ended at midnight on December the 5th or 7th, something like that. And request was made to return not only the demons bound here by Solomon, but also those in the lower astral as well. As of yesterday, of this particular show, realms 3, 4, 5 and 6 were emptied, and there were reports of 12 more needing emptying, but I don't think it's attached to this plane. The rest of them anyway, all to be returned back to source. Now, 2 of the realms left by their own choice. I suspect that was 1 and 2. 1 was the wolf realm. 2 was removed earlier this year, the clown or the circus realm. And yes, it's real. Since I did that show and mentioned it, people have come forward and remember some rather horrific nightmares, which is what it is, of going to that realm. It's not fun, and that's why so many kids are frightened of clowns. So the 7 layers of hell, the lower astral, which is the 7 is called hell, was being emptied out for their benefit as well as ours, as they've been trapped here for a long time also, and all will return to source. All souls that have been harvested have been returned to source. Many were too damaged to be brought back in, as I understand it, and returning to source will allow that soul to be healed and rebirthed. Now, this was of enormous benefit to not only humanity, but those that were trapped and denied access of a return to source for many, many lifetimes and over many thousands of years. Now, I appreciate this is not an instant provable item from an external aspect, but over time the difference will be marked. We often seek the external aspect of things like funding or mass arrests, but like painting a house, the preparation is the key to a good job. The paint covers all the real work. And we appreciate the external job finished, but it's the hidden internal aspect that makes the external gain manifest. Hi all and welcome back. Angels, angels keep on fighting. Demons will continue biting, from that song. Except the angels and the demons are you in totality. They're not separate. It's your choice which way and path you go on. Now, that particular show, Demons and Magic, was a groundbreaker in many ways, and it connected many of the dots on so many levels, and every person on the planet will have been triggered in one way or another by that show, as it spoke to all of us, in so many different ways. Some felt stupid, but how can you feel stupid if you don't have the knowledge? What is stupid is you do have the knowledge and you don't use it. Many the members or the listeners reported crying after that show and during it for a variety of reasons, because it triggered so many emotions within each of us, and it was always going to be that way. As you all now know, much of our history is false, and there have been and are many hidden aspects, and this was the latest. I don't think the real impact of certain events has been fully absorbed by people yet, and only over time will the stark reality of what has already taken place here will be deemed extraordinary. Clowns in the past week, early December, tried to leverage resources against 19 African countries, which is bad enough. But they know no boundaries, it seems, and went one step further to try and leverage the whole of Alaska following the SS Small P induced earthquake, and also the alleged fires, which were not, in Paradise, California, which was also induced by the same SS Small P clowns. The military in Paradise, California is not our military, it's theirs. I was asked the question recently, is the SSP and SS Small P different, or is the SSP the alliance? And the answer was, it's the same as. I don't care what other alt media person tells you different. Fine if you want to believe that. The reality is that particular group are rogue, all of them. They're not interested in us, never have been. They haven't shared the tech that they've had access to for at least 70 years. So you can forget SSP and the alliance and all that nonsense. So following certain incidents and the leveraging and other incidents that took place in early December, the Trust decided that we'd had enough, and all negotiations with clowns, deep state, dragon families, the order, bloodline families and militaries, etc. were now cancelled due to their inability to face reality. We're not wasting any more time with those clowns. And whilst they piddle about waiting for some divine intervention, the return of their gods, or Rothschild's RV, or some other fake elderly Chinese people to bail them out, which we told you many years ago, it's not happening. But you didn't listen. So all negotiations are off. Then we had the 4-year loop news story. An event that took place in late November, early December of 2014 was rolled out in a funeral, and it was fun for us, for the announcement of the I'd like to say an awful lot more. Perhaps best not after some of the complaints in yesterday's show. The death announcement of Bush Sr. Now, what that brought was another shockwave through society, and it will have a ripple effect throughout the slave minions that are operating for the cabal. Just that some of them don't recognise they're slaves yet. But Bush Sr. carried an aura around with him that induced fear and made people follow orders or pay the price. And that family has carried that aura for over 100 years, but with the announcement now of his passing, that aura of fear is now gone. And George W. and Jeb just do not carry the same power and fear factor that he had. Their stock will weaken quickly and will enable more to come forward and expose with the kingpin gone. And he was a kingpin in the lower end of the system. And it symbolises another crack in the old system that can't or won't be replaced. And as they topple one by one, our opportunity to replace them with something better will also increase. The sands of time are now running low on Cheney, Rumsfeld, Kissinger, Jacob Rothschild, and the Clintons. Tick-tock. But the outpouring of pure vomit of a man, and I say that loosely, and I mean loosely, for Bush Senior, shocked many in the alt media. We all know or have heard the antics that that person got up to. He even admitted himself, if the people ever find out what we've done, they will chase us down the street and lynch us. That tells you all. But the timing of the announcement was not lost on me. And I'm sure Chloe, wherever she is, I don't know where she is now, will have laughed when that announcement came, because we were waiting for it from 2015 onwards. And the reason being is the 4-year loop, which I first considered as a possible theory back in 2013, because things hadn't changed sufficiently in 13 like they should have done, following the end of their contract in 2012 and their failure to complete. Now, I confirmed it privately in 2015 and announced the Bush death date back then, in 2015. And this is the 4-year loop, is all about creating a timeline back so they can win. Now, it won't matter and won't work, no matter what they try. But what they're trying to do is convince people it's 2014 again. Possibly loop to 2016, which then loops back to 2012. I'll have more on that later. How can you trust, let me did this piece. How can you trust others when many don't trust themselves? Reality is defined by the person, in essence, on what you experience. What is unique in this time period is we are finding it's a common theme amongst the group. Shared experiences. People thought they were going nuts. Why would having an experience make you feel that you're going nuts? It is what it is. That's reality. Just because the system decides it's not normal doesn't make it abnormal, does it? So what is real to you is not always real to others. But you should never define your own experiences by others. That is externalizing when your truth is internal. You know. You experienced it. You witnessed it. Now, some things can never be investigated and proof garnered. But most of this war is largely providing no external proof. It takes an inner knowing and trust to make sense of the limitations of our 5 senses in here. Now, some do have more senses, and those are the ones who see for real. We are the sin eaters. We've swallowed the poison and now are providing the antidote. And it's up to all of us to do that to the best of our abilities. And the first thing you have to do is trust yourself. Then we had the event of Trump and the showroom dummy, along with Schumer and Pelosi in the Oval Office, I think, or it's in the White House, and he called in the media and proceeded to tear them a new asshole. And what I said at the time, the wall is a side issue, and it still is. He knows the wall is funded, and he knows where it's coming from. It's all a strategy game. But it's a pity the showroom dummy, Pence, sat there like a clown. Perhaps he is. Then we had clowns from the Pentagon and Langley at the behest of Chinese elders and Rothschilds that spent all day this, I think it was the second Monday in December, in the Treasury office, trying to force them into accepting Treasury reserve notes and or United States notes backed by an SKR, which was fake and had no backing. And the trust had forewarned them in an extensive brief the day before, following Rothschild's secret meeting over the weekend, except it was not that secret, was it? Oops, we have eyes and ears everywhere, much to their chagrin. And they were planning this all weekend, and they tried again on a Tuesday and got rebuffed again by the Treasury. And essentially this was confirmed as a fake currency by both the Trust and also the Treasury. Now this was to fund the budget, and all those departments and banks who are running in negative equity now have been for the past month, was a bailout. That's what they were trying to do. But the Trust gave $250 million to the Treasury to pay the staff wages only. So to those who keep doubting that they are still in control and have loads of funds to keep going, this incident alone tells you they have nothing left. They're trying to create fake currencies that they can print again. Plus the fact that week at the IMF telling 134 countries to ditch their currencies and to go crypto. It all tells you a very different picture. They have nothing left. And like I said, we can play the long game. They can't. So then we did a piece on higher and lower vibration, and it all comes down to you and what you allow or accept, low or high vibration. But you will not reach mental planes and higher consciousness in the lower vibrational state. It's not possible. That's why they do that. Now, low vibration traits are anger, hate, fear, sadness, worry, confusion, chaos, apathy, pain, suffering, blame, shame, guilt, and the two key ones to overcome, closed mind and the far more damaging, closed heart. Anger and hate are projections. Fear leads to sadness and worry for the future. Fear is a future word, as it hasn't happened, but can happen as you've not addressed your own ability to change that future. Confusion, chaos and apathy are something they created but you bought into. Blame, shame and guilt are your own failures to address your shadow and inner work. Closed minds are the cancer of society. Closed hearts are the blockages at the solar plexus, and why so many go with gut instincts and not the heart. Higher vibrations are joy, happiness and kindness, compassion, clarity, wonder, reverence, calm, curiosity, with two key vibrations of open mind and open heart. Joy and happiness are of your own making. Never let anyone else decide your mood for you. Kindness and compassion, remember, costs nothing. Nothing materialistic anyway. Only your loving energy. Clarity comes with understanding. Wonder is your manifest abilities. Reverence is respect, like treating others how you would like to be treated in return. Calm. The calm. 45-55, anyone? In the balance. I've said it often enough now. Calm brings balance, which is centering. Curiosity is what brought you here. And as the saying goes, you know what curiosity does? It kills the cat. But curiosity has other benefits. Like it can lead to the opening of the mind and the final stage of really opening your heart, which also has all the five senses and some extra when it's fully switched on. I can just feel the hairs going on the back of my neck with the cat policing me way. Yes, you, Michelle. So then we, right, let's get serious, because this is, next bit is unpleasant. I'm very serious. We first mentioned this long before it would become popular with the Q people and others on the internet. Adrenochrome. And it's a chemical known since at least the 1930s, and is a chemical compound with the molecular formula C9H9NO3, and is produced by the oxidization of adrenaline in mammals. And the chemical especially concentrates in the body during times of high. That's that out of balance again. Fight or flight response conditions, such as during extreme trauma and suffering. And the elites, or the elite, elite being the proper term, because they think they're gods, El means God, instead kidnap children, rape and torture them in order to concentrate the adrenaline in their glands. They then harvest the adrenochrome from the glands while the subject is living. Adrenochrome does not last long in a corpse. And finally, they murder the victim after the drug is extracted. Alternately, the subject may be kept alive for repeated extractions. In this case, a needle is plunged into the eye to extract the adrenochrome from the brainstem without cutting into the skull. They also run massive child trafficking rings all over the world, which buy and sell children, and adrenochrome more readily concentrates in a child's gland, since the glands do not grow much with age. And since children experience massively heightened fight or flight reactions and increased adrenaline surges as a result of that trauma. Now you know why 900,000 children go missing permanently in America alone each year. 8 million, which we covered in a recent show. It sickens me to the core. It's them we have to fight for. And then we had the cabal piss take, which they're so fond of doing, putting it in your faces, because they have to tell you what to do. But it's wrapped up in movies and puzzles and cryptic graphics. And the name of Google's GPU, graphic processing unit, was named Adreno, the original one. Now, Google released Chrome in September 2008 and obtained their GPU in 2009 and immediately renamed it to Adreno. Adreno Chrome. Same legendary drug for the elites involved in occult rituals. Now, as I've said, the children are horribly tortured during this and traumatized, so their bodies produce a lot of adrenaline in their blood. The torturers then murder the children and drink the spiked blood of the children also. Google really means go ogle, as in let's spy on you. And those sick bastards need to be closed down in the future, along with Gates and Microsoft and his let's kill all the Africans and Indians vaccines. And I'm hoping many will come forward with their plans for a new internet and platforms minus those two satanic empires, and we will fund them from the trust when the blocks are removed.
Wow.
Hi all and welcome back. A sobering recap there. It just sickens me, the depth of depravity of some people. And what it all boils down to is pure service to self. That they think that their lives are more important and their life longevity is more important than a child's. It's just about the worst aspect of service to self you can ever get. But these people are being brought down, rest assured on that. Then I went into a description in December of describing what has really taken place and how to view it in a graphic form. And what is happening is like is twofold, like a wave. Now, some are on the downward wave and some are on the up wave. Now, many of you started out before THI on the up wave because you realised something is not right with this world. So you had a head start. And yet, despite the head start, you still underwent a new learning curve that has taken some time to adjust to, and then launch yourself on your path of discovery about you and all around you. But what about the people who are on the down wave? Do they not have to take some time to navigate the down wave first before plateauing and then joining the up wave? So if it's taken you 2.5 years, which is how long THI has been going, a little bit longer now, how long do you expect them to get to your level? You might be saying or thinking now. And THI is like a dimmer switch. We increase the light and the knowledge as people processed and grasped each stage of it. A gradual turning up of the switch. But the others, and particularly those in the world's top positions, had their light on full. Except it wasn't light at all, but the dark. Mirror magic illusion, and why they call themselves the illuminated ones. And I'm sorry for them, but it was the false light you absorbed, an illusion of the real light, and its message for those people is they have to dim the light in phases until it goes dark, and then start the real journey back up again. How long do you think those people will take to reach your level and understanding? Many are thinking now, holy shit, that may take forever. For some of them, yes, not all. And this is why we need to push forward in and on our path. We can't wait for them. We have to be the change and drag them along for the ride. Immigration going forward will not be country to country, but from their world into ours. Clowns spent all weekend coming up with various let's continue the old failed programme schemes, and by Monday they all crashed and burned. Oops. This was in the middle of December. And then on the Monday, this was a big step for Kim, I, and the Manor World Holding Trust. And the implications are still rocking. The Federal Reserve, for those new to the show, the Federal Reserve Bank and its assets belong to the Manor World Holding Trust. All of it. But they're operating on the illusion Federal Reserve now, a bit like the UN. And they rocked up to the Treasury along with people from the White House, the Pentagon, all the agencies, and the Appropriations Committee, which is essentially people made up out of Congress. Now the Federal Reserve then proceeded to produce, before all those peoples and groups, every bank's financial statement, including their own. Every government department's financial status, every agency's, the Pentagon, and the military's financial status, and all of them have zero liquidity, and all of them are operating in negative funds. You remember from last night, the night before show, I mentioned that they turned up with books that were all faked. This time they couldn't, after Kim removed the mirrors out of the Treasury in sometime in November. So they admitted to all and sundry that all of them are broke, including the Federal Reserve. And their solution was, we have no options left now as we are all broke, and we're going to have to issue TRNs or USNs, or we're all doomed, is what they put it forward. No, we're not. You are. So according to them, there are no other options now, and the whole country will collapse unless the Federal Reserve is allowed to issue TRNs or the USNs. Then the Treasury and the White House people stepped in and disagreed. And the Congress operated, which is important. The Office of, the Appropriations Committee stepped in and said, I'm sorry, but we do have other options, and that is the Manor World Holding Trust. And they have been paying us all and keeping us in jobs and wages since March. Oh boy. So now we have support of many inside the Congress as well. They're now fully aware of what's going on. And one of them turned round and said to the Federal Reserve, you either get on board with the Trump and trust train, or you will all sink and die. Oops. So the feds were pushing the TRN debt notes. Any note is a debt, an IOU, because they don't have the assets to support a real currency. You know, this is common sense speak now. Unfortunately, people in the RV, and I'll have more to say about people in the RV later, because it's to do with the clowns operating the RV, not the people buying dinos and dongs and dings and all that nonsense. They've just admitted they don't have the assets to support a real currency and want to issue another fake one. So what does that tell you? There is no RV. So because the Fed failed in their crash the American economy, mainly due to the trust, crashing the markets also, their plan was to crash everything, leave all banks, government, agencies and military departments crashed and burned, so the Treasury and the White House had no option but to accept the TRNs and the USNs as the new currency. It was rejected, and so, like the childish people they are, they raised interest rates yesterday, which they have no authority to do so. And we've told Mr. Trump this. That's why he's getting pissy in public. They are a failed, bankrupt and defunct organisation, and it's time that official action and actions are taken to get them off our soil once and for all. They're not American, you never were. And for those who ask how they can implement it outside of government, for one, the government controls nothing, and I mean nothing. And as it stands, two, the Fed controls all banks and they implement interest rates, the banks do, and the Fed policy. And this is what this show and Kim has been telling all the top brass here for the last 2 years, that they are financially assassinating this country on behalf of the Rothschilds, and let's transfer all the wealth over to the East, as per the 1912 agreement, where the West controls the financial aspects via the Federal Reserve for 100 years, which ran out in June of 2012. Then it was going to China for the next 100 years, except it's not, because it's all a control system. So to use a popular term Kim has, I promise you, it's not happening. It hasn't, and it won't. All investigative committees are now focusing on looking into the Federal Reserve and all their banks for facilitating and using super notes as a major fraud and corruption event. Over 100 billion that was circulated, and they all knew what they were doing and took part in it. All designed for floating liquidity whilst they worked out their TRN or the USN bullshittery. So like I keep saying, for those who doubt they have nothing left of what is called the real currency, there's your hint. Super notes, TRNs, USNs, admitting they're bankrupt. Oops. The message was given to Trump via the show and the team. You have been given the tools and the platform to correct all this nonsense, and it's time to deliver on it. Now, for those, we have many more listeners, something like 70 to 80 times more listeners than members of MeWe and Facebook. There was a news article in Liberia in the middle of December that may put to rest those who have doubts over the validity of Manor World Holding Trust having assets, or it's just another OPPT style bullshit, as some have said on some of the YouTube comments. Perhaps they need to listen to this piece. James Larman Corboy, a Sierra Leonean national, who was said to have held a series of confidential discussions with authorities of both the Ministries of Finance and Development Planning and State for Presidential Affairs that led to his alleged attempt to withdraw 32 million, near 33 million, from the account of the Manor World Holding Trust. You know, the ones in alt media who say it doesn't exist, well, there you go. Funds to Liberia, and he was remanded in custody on Monday, December the 17th, 2018. The Manor World Holding Trust to Liberia is a company that holds Liberia's Development and Road Construction Fund, and a document obtained from the Monrovia City Court about the trust fund claimed it had been in possession of over 5.914 billion for road construction and development initiatives in that country. It was out of that money that Cowboy allegedly conspired with several other defendants to dupe the government of $33 million. The document failed to give further details and ownership of the Manor World Holding Trust. Instead, it alleged that Cowboy, shortly after he failed to convince the ministries to withdraw the $33 million, with wicked and criminal intent, organised several discussions, this time with the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, to withdraw 5.914 billion from the Manor World Holding Trust, after which police arrested him. So there you go. His co-conspirators involved UN and IMF goons. So we had a chat sometime in December, the team did, with GCHQ, the spying agency which runs the NSA in America from Britain. That's who the NSA is, GCHQ. Now, the people in there that run it are part of the Blue Dragon Group, whose leader is Anne, or Hillary. Now, they were complaining that they had not been paid $300 million that Anne promised them if they bombed Syria and planted fake chemicals, which they went ahead and did. One day after that call, Trump withdrew troops from Syria. Coincidence? We know not. And then it came up again, which it often does, loop times, about vaults in Asia. And we felt we had to warn again. All those vaults in Asia, be it Indonesia, the Philippines, etc., that carried lots more than just gold, were all emptied out to a safe, non-recoverable place 4 to 5 years ago, and is all housed inside the trust, because that's who it belonged to. The trust, as we now know, owns everything, because it was a harvesting program, except Kim is going to unharvest it and give it all back to the people it belongs to, which is everyone on this planet, not just Rothschildians or other clowns. But it was Marcos and Sukarno et al. Who put that gold there to begin with, as they were trustees. Oops. As was Gaddafi, as was Nelson Mandela. Oh my. Part of the old trust with Marduk. And for the record, all people not of the right frequency, and there's only about 5 on the planet as I understand it, attempting to enter or go near certain vaults will end in their death. Period. As some in Indonesia and the Philippines found out recently, and also that particular week. Final warning We have warned you all, but you didn't listen. But if you wish to kill yourself, then we won't stop you from your own stupidity. And then I gave another one came up. Leo Wantett. Oh my. It seems as time passes by, the inflation rate goes up with Leo Wantett. Because originally he was talking about 27 trillion. Now he's saying it's 400 trillion. Oh my. But this is another Loop Pearson story. Leo Wantett was part of the Langley Bush group, Langley 2, and a Dragon program to steal all of the funds out of the disbanding of the USSR. And they collected 27 trillion out of it. Now, in part, he was a facilitator, and he knew full well what he was involved in, except he got stung from higher up the chain, and they not only cut him out the deal, but threw him in jail also. So it's a case of play with fire, Mr. Wantett, and sometimes you get burnt. Now, Wantett, like other fake humanitarian programs like Jared Rand, the Rand Corporation is CIA. Oops. The Rand Corporation is the CIA. Chinese elders, Procter & Gamble, Von Reitz and the Habsburgs. Not all of these people and groups were involved with the trust. And they've got no intentions of giving anything back to the public, none whatsoever. Why didn't Wantett give the 27 trillion back when they stole it back in the 90s to the public? Because they had no intentions of, that's why. All of them are self-serving scumbags and always have been. Only now they no longer can steal the assets that belong to us all. So suddenly they all portray themselves as the saviour. And we want to do humanitarian packages. Bullshit. I, for one, I'm not buying it. And neither is Kim and the Trust. All these people got played for fools big time. Heads of industry like oilmen, Rockefeller, Rothschilds and the banks, all played a game of collect all the assets like the harvesters they were. And they all thought they had or were in control of it. Except they didn't. But these clowns are all trying to claim ownerships of assets. But they've all been paid for those assets. And why all those type are, or were, as the case may be now, rich. But Marduk cared not for pieces of paper. They were handed out like confetti to people only too willing to trade all of the earth's resources away, including people. The next four pieces, I will use the term that was put forward by one of our members, David, and he describes these pieces, and the word is prescient. And as forecasted, raids on pedos in the Vatican Church is now underway and has made public news. Pope Francis made a private promise to undertake and carry out this effort, including dealing with Ratzinger. What is it? Reitzinger. What is it? Reitz. Maybe the same. Oil from a high of 73 a few months ago was now down to 45 and fallen as forecasted. And if correct, 100% correct, it will fall down to $25 to $29 a barrel. Processing it costs $1 to $2 per barrel, for those who don't know. We did a detailed show of issues of all the troops sent out by the US Military Inc. and how and why there is an issue of and they're struggling with the idea of bringing back thousands of troops from overseas that have been damaged by military policy. So I was rather pleased that week to see a report that the Pentagon is ready to admit problems of rampant special force crimes. The BBC, predictably, which is run by the Zionists, ran a piece on the folly of Trump removing troops from Syria. It's all too predictable from the Blue Dragon Zionist group and the MI5-6 groups, plus the Rothschildians that run that country, government and the media, by the way. And incidentally, that decision was taken without General Dunford. He was not in attendance, as previously mentioned, about his position in this show, and Mattis and Pompeo didn't agree with it. Generals gathered in the Mattis? Question mark. Of course, that unfolded later. Then in the last show, last Thursday show, we announced the stock market was crashing, and it's deliberate by the cabal and is designed to take out all businesses except the top 10%. So they're using it to eliminate all smaller companies entirely. So now not only are they trying to financially assassinate America, they're trying to make sure only they have businesses. The dip up that took place late in the week was indicative. You know who was involved in that. So from an overview point of view, what they're trying to do is position themselves. They know their time is short with the old system, and the new system, the quantum system, with the new banking that's all transparent and the trust funds coming out, what they're trying to do is eliminate businesses so only they receive the money. We'll be one step ahead of that. Markets will go up and markets will go down. You will waste energy making sense of them currently, and you'll waste more energy making sense of tweets, because some of them are distractions, comments on social media and mainstream media as well. It will all begin to make sense eventually, but I'm not given a time scale. Then we did what was kind of a groundbreaking piece that I've been researching, and I must give credit to Dane Calloway of YouTube for some of this piece. And it was about the indigenous people of America. Did you know, or have you heard of the American Holocaust? Nope, I thought not. Much like the Russian Holocaust 2 years earlier, in 1919, the American military and federal government bombed the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921 and killed many thousands of people of colour who had at that time developed very efficient, numerous and prosperous businesses within that particular region. Now, the most popular being mass agriculture. And they were accused of being capitalists in an industrial society and then bombed into oblivion by the US Army planes at the behest of the federal government under an executive order called martial law created by Congress and the President Woodrow Wilson, who's a Democrat. I've said that for a reason, not that I favour one party over the other. I would eliminate both and just have people doing a job, which is what it is. The indigenous people had created their own banks in 1865, called the Freedman Savings and Trust Bank, which upon opening had over 72,000 accounts and had deposits of $52 million, which is the equivalent to over $100 billion today, and made it the largest grossing bank in American history at that time. Within a month of agreeing the deal, President Lincoln was assassinated and things began to go north, not south. You know the history of the Civil War. In came Andrew Johnson, a native of Newcastle, England, another Democrat, who took over the presidency by default and was another who was involved in and links with the fledgling KKK, Ku Klux Klan, which was formed as an official group in December of 1865. No coincidence. And a more lesser known group known as the Night Riders was formed 1 week later on New Year's Day 1866. Both of those groups, the KKK and the Night Riders, were born out of the Democrat Party. Their symbols on their subsequent flags, like Antifa, are exactly the same as the earlier named National Socialist Party, but were actually Social Democratic Party, which was later known as the Nazi Party in Germany. Same people, same program. Another massacre his story has not revealed too readily was committed by the Democratic mayor, the Klan, who also joined up with the New Orleans police at a Republican convention whereby they attacked and killed 40 blacks, 20 whites, and wounded 150 others the very next year. In 1968, the Klan then released push cards, they were called. They're like baseball cards, with a list of 63 Republicans designated to be killed, 50 of which were black and 13 white, and this was in South Carolina. They then passed laws against the indigenous Negroes, as they were called back then, where bearing arms was banned to them, limited the abilities for the native groups to continue to be prosperous economically, banned group gatherings, barred blacks from renting or buying land, barred them from serving on juries, voting for blacks was prohibited, decided black orphans could be put into forced labour, and the classic Negroes learning to read and write became a criminal offence. Really. This is known as the Black Codes of 1865. Harassment and enforced incarcerations based on largely trumped-up charges then forced them into labour camps, and the slavery racket abolished by Lincoln and others was washed away into his story. But these Negro businesses, as they were called back then, the term Negro was first used by the Portuguese. It meant dark-skinned. But these people were not African Negroes at all, but Indian Negroes. There was an influx of Africa when word got out in Africa, which once trading had started between the two countries. Word got out that there was prosperity to be made working in America, not Africa. In fact, much of the African labour was traded to the Middle East countries by the East African slave trade long before the Europeans arrived. It was going on centuries before. The myth, supported by documentation of an African slave migration to the Americas, is just that, a myth. there was a very successful, hard-working business-like population here of indigenous Native Americans with an influx of Caribbean peoples, but the majority of peoples here were not descendants of black African slaves, but indigenous natives. The abolition of the Slavery Act was essentially a ruse. They were adopting a new free enterprise system because neither the North or the South were operating as well financially as the indigenous people. They couldn't farm the land, had less businesses that were profitable, and less banks also. And they were concerned the indigenous were becoming capitalists and self-sustaining. And they wanted an industrial output, which they controlled, of course. In other words, the whole plan was, you teach us what you can do, and then we can steal it all from you so you can forget that the wars were all about slavery that you've been taught in schools, colleges and academias. They took pre-written scripts given to them by the same group of scumbags today we call the cabal. But there is another hidden element to this so-called white supremacy movement implemented by the founding fathers. Yes, you heard that correctly. Successive American presidents, the police, the judges and the KKK. The White Helmets. Oops. All were affiliated by one group, the Freemasons, and in particular the Scottish Rite group. It is they who have subverted American history. They who raped and pillaged the indigenous black Indians. They who destroyed the prosperous businesses shared by many and corralled into the few. They who built the Egyptian-style obelisks. They who built the Washington, D.C. into a pentagram shape. They who brought into New York Harbor the so-called Lady Liberty, which was built and sent by Freemasons connected to the Rothschilds, and another trick played on the American people. It barely looks like a lady at all, and it's got nothing to do with liberty for anyone of Turtle Island, which was what the Americas was once known for. The Out of Africa theory was formulated in the 1920s by a Jewish person aligned with Carnegie, the Ford Institute and others in the Anthropological Society, and by the name of Melville Herskovich. All evidence points to the fact that this was a deliberately created theory designed to deny the people of colour their inherent right to the land in America. Now I wonder how many people listening to this now knew Malcolm X was not representing the people of colour either. He was representing the group known as the Nation of Islam. Imagine him lasting in America nowadays with so many anti-Muslims, rhetoric based on portal people fear programs. He wouldn't last a day. But the question is, and this is my question, was Malcolm X a stooge for a future program of the Muslim Brotherhood? For those that don't know, the Muslim Brotherhood is nothing to do with Muslims and everything to do with Langley 3, Obama and their divide and conquer tactics. In 1790, George Washington initiated the Census Act to document all peoples in America. People of colour came under one bracket based on official guidelines that were set by the government. All records that would substantiate most people of colour were indigenous and North African between 1790 and 1890 was all erased in January 1921, just 5 months before the American Holocaust we mentioned at the top of this piece. All in a fire. Funny that, isn't it? How so many fires globally burnt so much his story, except it was ours. You see, false flags have gone on a long time. Now, all this was perpetrated by a guy by the name of Francis Galton and his sidekick, or better known as Charles Darwin. Both took part in the initial program called eugenics, natural selection, one group better than the other, and essentially the beginning of labelling, boxing people up, and what's now known by the term racial profiling. Yes, again, the classic divide and conquer tactic of the criminal elites. In 1924, Virginia's ruling elite enacted the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, stating the following, that all state officials, which was backed by Walter Plecker, and yes, he was German, who was documented as writing to Walter Gross, the director of Germany's Bureau of Human Betterment and Eugenics Group. Oh my, that's an oxymoron in and of itself. It's a bit like calling the agencies intelligent. Oh dear. And it directed all state and local courthouse records to be destroyed and reclassify all people who were non-white to be labelled coloured. Now, this was to hide who those people really are or where they were from. People calling themselves Native American from that date risked facing a 1-year jail sentence. All Indians were then classified as coloured. But as you can see, it was all about the pseudoscience called eugenics. And you all thought that racial purity started with Hitler and the Nazis in the 1940s. Think again. This all started before he was born. It wasn't until the US Supreme Court in 1968 forced Virginia to repeal that law, and the Virginia Racial Integrity Act of 1924 was overturned. But in the subsequent time span, the identity of these people were changed 5 times on their birth certificates and licenses. It went from coloured to Negro to mulatto to Creole and then black. The reality is, in this country, despite what the fake genealogy tests tell you, yes, that's you, Ancestry.com and 23andMe, it's all fake. Their results are stacked. 98% of people known as African Americans in this country are actually indigenous, Aboriginal Indians. His story now becomes their story. Hi all, and welcome back. That in essence completed the 2018 review. So what happens next? Well, you're all going to die. Not quite. I just had to put that one out again. This next piece I wrote this week, and it's like a story, and a cryptic one. and it covers 2018 and also 2019. So before I get into what happens in 2000, or what I think will happen in 2019 and what I would like to see in 2019, we're going to do this piece. So after the generals gathered in the Matis, there was much Pompeo derived from that, much hilarity, as the no-name and the burning bush stories were told. Afterwards, some needed some R&R. Some were hungry and required munchkins. Some were poor, never had a pence to their name. Anne needed an RV to escort to aids her Bill. Bill was singing Elvis Costello songs in his head, singing, "I don't want to go to Chelsea." While some are waiting for the next funeral that will come after the movie ends. "Come ye," they cried, whilst Ella mooed in reverse. "Hello, my name is Huma. No," they said. And the cloud descending, and everything went brown. "All say hi to Inga," they cried. But Inga had to leave, and they said, "Let's all kiss Inga goodbye." They all arranged a toast and drank ale, and Rums felt giddy afterwards. "Great Scott," they said, as they were almost all beamed out. The meeting began. "BS," they all cried. "Yes, I'm here," he said. "Say hello to Ken, you all." I ran for cover as the oily plot got slippery. We have to solve one member's problem, as their career is heading north and not south, so intervention is underway. One of our operations ran by Poppy Field, may return from abroad sometime this year. We must prevent that return. We may have to speak to No Action Talk only, but they have been busy rushing around. They need to stop rushing around and create a collusion. They are still doing quite a bit of crime here and there, while the UK rain falls red. We must complete these tasks or all will go black, water and all, and it will cost a princely sum to correct it, and we don't have the moolah anymore. It will take a system of quantum proportions to get it all back, and we need to struck a deal, they said. There was a collected sigh. Rhea proclaimed, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater." Mr. Stein stood up and pronounced he was taking over another media giant. But not all that glitters is gold. It could well be silver as well. "Oh, cool," they said. "That'll be Feinstein. We will call it Clinton News Network, or CNN for short." The speaker stood up and announced it may not speak for much longer, as the party is almost over. We have no pizza left, and we have a comet pinging and ponging our arses. Branston is in a pickle, as he got his necker stuck in an island. Alas, there will be no return of the Mac. Whilst everyone were biding their time, they all reflected on the Bush prophecy of Loretta being lynched, so they passed time by eating bowls of rice. After all was consumed, they all decided to play a game of cards, except someone trumped them to that. "Oh, this is impossible," they cried. Then an increasing, booming voice was heard saying, "Trust me, we have to do things in the right manner. I think it's okay. I'm possible." TikTok. Hope you like that. Right, where are we next? 2019. Get the music ready. Right. As you can see, 2018 did bring an unveiling. Doors were open to you and all. And not all have walked through yet, and that's okay. Some of you have. And that's the important thing to carry with you into the year, which will be our last before 2020 vision, and we will all see. As for the rest, there's a famous saying, "Hear this, O foolish and senseless people, who have eyes but do not see, who have ears but do not hear." We have tried, and boy have we tried. But we have not failed them. They failed themselves. And it's important you all remember that, as the so-called conspiracies are now all out in the open for all to observe. They choose not to sin eat like we have, and left us hanging, mired in frustration, rejection, and having to absorb far more irrelevant isolation, until THI came along. These people are all service to self. They care not for others outside of their own little bubble world, and some don't even go that far. They chose to stay in the city of light world, where nothing bad happens. They walk around like zombies, partying on alcohol, drugs and drama, with little to no care for those outside of it. Service to self, like I said earlier, is a cancer on this planet, and too many have consumed it in a greedy, self-serving, materialistic way. We all weep, worry and have fears for them, and that is understandable. But far too much of our energy was consumed by these vampiric style people, and we got little back in return. Not even the common courtesy of listening. They roll on listening to and voting for the faceless men and women called politicians, like they are the gods of the past. Follow the talentless, like the Kardashians, the Hiltons, the Kanyes, the Hollywood wives and their New York counterparts, because it's all drama, you see. It masks the reality. They love the illusion of it all. And that is why they and their smartphones and iPads will march into the virtual reality world as described by Shane. Rest assured, we won't be. We have had many confirms on this show, but that show with Shane more than confirmed the two worlds theory. They will not be discarded, no one will, but they are not ready for our world yet. This year, as forecasted, we would see what I termed the masks of illusion. I first mentioned back in 2015 and deeper in 2016. All the masks of everybody are coming off. I warned it would be ugly, as most people have used the mask to cover themselves up like an avatar. But the mask is not the real you, is it? The masks cover guilt, shame, insecurities, weakness, ego, envy, bravado, two-faced people smile in the front while stabbing you in the back. It is a lying mask, really, a false image, and why shadow and inner work requested of you all back in 2015 to get ahead of this and correct yourself was so important. The lies people tell no longer work like they used to, like the control, banking or political systems no longer work like they used to. It's all breaking down into something new, a new path where you decide where it goes, not them. Many of you have experienced these masks dropping and have horrified some of you the depth of it, be it in marriages, love partnerships, family, friends or work colleagues. It has been painful to undertake for many of us. But it's another attempt of vampirism in many respects to pull you back into the false reality world. And some do go back in, as it's easier to just fit in. But the reality is you don't, do you? It's not your world, it's theirs. Little birds chiming in your ear telling you this is not for you. Walk your path, not theirs. The constant battle raging inside of you between the mindless reptilian head chatter and the heart. Which one wins out is your choice to make, not theirs. I said it would become more obvious to you all this year between the wheat and the chaff, those ready and those not. I said it wouldn't be easy either, and that has been the case. And remember, the truth does not have to be validated by ignorance. I said two very important statements in the last month. They may have got lost, so I'll repeat them as they will become prevalent as you walk your path. The illiterate for this century will not be like the last century for those who couldn't read or write. The illiterate for this century will be those who cannot unlearn the lies. They have all devoured this in this century and all the other centuries. And immigration or migration of the future will not be from country to country, but from their world into ours. The biggest hurdle we all face is who to trust. Trust is in short supply these days. It always is when chaos reigns. But how can you trust others when you don't trust yourself? Your own self tells you so much each and every day, and yet many choose to ignore it. Why would you battle yourself as well as all of those outside of you? It's energy draining, is it not? Then it's simple. Just don't do that. Stop doubting yourself, believe in yourself, trust in yourself, and more importantly, love yourself. It's liberating and a true definition of freedom, being you, regardless of what others say or think. Love yourself. How can you expect others to love you when you don't? Yes, they can and will love you, but it'll be far more harmonic if you love you also. Love brings higher vibrations, but it can also bring much pain. But too few mistake love for security or safety mode living. Love is not abusive. Love is not violence. Love is not conditional. Love cannot thrive in an environment of envy, greed, or narcissistic traits. Those environments eat away at you and erode what it means to love and be loved, and also lowers your vibration. It's a toxic medicinal poison that pervades your every cell and diminishes you, and your light dims and dims and dims until you are left with just a shadow, the one you see of yourself in the mirror in an unlit bathroom. It all comes down to what you accept in life, and a healthy dose of courage, of being you. Many ask for change, and yet so many fear it. Remember the E.T. saying, just try to accept we are in paradise when we are seeing and understanding something new. Our God should be change. Our religion should be understanding. Searching for truth is our greatest social challenge and purpose. Our God should be change. Well, if we want change, do we not have to embrace it? The alt media this year saw a rise in the blog known as Q, and regardless of who or what Q is, and regardless of whether it's another psyop or not, we now have an army of people who are researching stuff for themselves, and this is of enormous benefit, as deep research for yourselves allows you to process it more and learn to see the patterns and then connect the dots. Most of that army are behind us in terms of knowledge, as many of you have observed this year. For me, that focus is too much on politics and one country in particular, but it has been a success for us in many ways. You all observed how the alt media, apart from a few exceptions like Randy Morgan's and the OYM lads, have basically shut us out from gaining a wider field. But whilst they've had some success with that in a narrow field, the larger field we've excelled in, regardless of their foolish attempts to shut us up. This show is listened to in over half the countries globally, and 48% of our listeners are now outside of America, and it grows by the day. It's listened in all countries by the top people, including the Chinese royals, as I mentioned recently. She referenced us on a call. Intelligence agencies globally listening, the Pentagon, the White House, the heads of state in all countries, all tune in. Some with good intentions and some not. But the former has increased exponentially over this year. The fruits of that we will see next year. The problem I see with alt media is too many shows, blogs or YouTubers are frighteningly stuck in the 4-year loop syndrome. Their information, opinions and insights have not gone past 2014. And the gulf in knowledge is drastic compared to this show, Randy's and the OYM lads. That gap must be bridged, and quickly. Those people are being dragged down a sideways path, and knowledge and learning is ever expanding. It's not a fixed loop subset of agency-driven narrative. I believe the alt media and its cynical methodology has now ran its course. We now know enough now not to repeat the failures of the past, and perhaps we need a new alt media that forges a path for the future for the betterment of all. But we will leave behind a treasure trove for those who are playing catch up. And as forecasted in this show at the end of 2017, I expect a handful of the big players in the alternative media will come to deeply regret their folly next year, and boy did they in 2018. I don't have to mention their names anymore, you've all seen it for yourself. We need a new vision to forge a better path, and we must push on with better solutions to the problems we face. Our 489 aspects of life all need from radical overhaul to adjustments here and there. People have to learn to grow again, For too long we've been stifled from learning, being creative, and have had the entrepreneurial spirit stripped away by greedy, vampiric harvesting programs. That will and has to change. We have to create better jobs to end the criminal practices going on globally, where we are not reliant on oil, don't need to chop down rainforests or so many trees, don't need to shoot tigers, elephants or rhinos for body parts, don't need to empty out all the oceans, don't need to sell children into slavery, don't need to be harvesting children for body parts, adrenochrome or sexual favours. We don't need to create more waste. All that can be stopped within a 12 to 36 month period by investment into those regions in industries and jobs, so that the people doing that have an alternative source of making money to feed their families. If clowns can waste money paying crisis actors $15 to $30 an hour to play deadly, sometimes live, false flag theatre games, then they can pay that to the people who actually work all week, and not $9 to $12 an hour shit either. Even without adding in all the new technology, we have so much to correct with the current needs. 1.2 billion still without electricity. Millions, if not billions, homeless or in ramshackle buildings. Billions without the basic meals or nutrition each day. Billions with no access to clean water, and despite what the clown at Nestle said, and I'm convinced Nestle is ran by the bug-eyed bastards known as the Mantids, as yet again recently they appeared for our water. Reason being, because the water here is living water compared to much of the rest of the universe. It's different. And yes, clean water is a human right. Peter Brabeck-Letmathe, the CEO of Nestle, another psychopath with a Germanic name, is from Austria. This next piece is to him, NATO, and the Langley 2 counterparts.
In jeder Stunde, an jedem Tag, nur zu denken an Deutschland, an Volk und an Reich, an unsere deutsche Nation. Unser deutsches Volk Sieg heil! 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 Sieg heil!
Sieg heil indeed. Psychopaths. Water. Not a human right. Oh dear. We have billions around the world, people around the world who are unlearned. They've been educated, which means training of animals, in utter drivel largely, bordering on retard levels, particularly in the West, where common sense is about as prevalent as rocking horse shit. That has to change drastically if we're going to develop a thriving adult species and not stay starved children for eternity. Teaching will be the key going forward. It will be the most massive undertaking of our species in the future. Teaching is not about learning the truth from the victors, as so much of our past has. It's about teaching the truth in full disclosure. There will be obvious limitations surrounding the two main topics that's been denied to most outside of THI, religion and ETs. But learning the real truth of the crimes of church and state will ease the whole planet into those topics for a future disclosure. I know we all want to know, talk about, or meet ETs. In reality, we already have. But it's not an important topic in an overview thinking pattern. We have far too many suffering on this planet, and that has to be the primary concern. A bit like, is the earth flat or round? Or is it natural or common law? Or are we going to 4 or 5D? Is there heaven or is there hell? Whose God is more important or better? All of it is totally irrelevant when compared to the plight of many people globally. And do we not need to know, talk to and engage our own kind before delving into the other's world? Do we not? This year I've spoken much about the perceived assumptions attached to each country. I did the From Russia with Love series, and now you all have a better understanding of Russia, or the Rus, like how they came to America's rescue twice in previous wars, I might add. The scriptwriters of his story won't tell you that. Oh no, that doesn't fit the divide and conquer narrative, does it? Are all Nazis German? Yes, if you are in a closed, unlearned mindset. Are all Americans warmongers? Are all Russians and Chinese communists? Are all Muslims jihadists? Are all Israelis genocidal maniacs? Are all Middle Easterners cruel or demeaning to women? Are all Europeans racist? The answer is no. It's what you've been programmed to believe in. You have assumed they are. Now, some of those people are those traits. But likewise, you can't base Americans on braggart Texans or motor-mouthed New Yorkers, or Brits based on people from London. I've warned about the changing of names of countries and did a piece in last month's one highlighting the name changes that have been going on in our lifetimes, never mind previous. This is more clever sleight of hand tactics of the divide and conquer program, a breaking up of the countries into smaller, more manageable compartments for them, which then leads to the people in each compartment hating on each other due to some perceived conflict when all of it was contrived. The spin-off of it is that his story gets rewritten again in their image, not ours. And now, whilst I would like us all on this planet to develop a universal common language, it is also important to retain the heritage of the individual groups, peoples, and tribes. So the message is, quit labelling of people from different countries. Culture, largely today, is a creative program of perception. Some of what we believe today of certain older tribes' practices were not always the best way of operating, with various rituals and sacrifices done to the supposed gods, and yet because of their culture, too many continue those practices today. Shit happens whether you do this or that ritual, regardless. Take out the fear programming and learn to create and manifest a new, more modern growth-based culture is surely the way forward. Learn for yourself about the different peoples around the world. All books are somebody else's opinion. For too long we've relied on our knowledge on the opinions of others, and it's time we learnt ourselves. THI members, I have witnessed tremendous growth again this year. The community spirit has been harnessed exponentially, regardless of the backgrounds of each of you. You have shown it matters not which country, race, colour, gender or belief system. All that has been forgotten. And we have all, by and large, got on very well together without the need of rules or laws. The levels of support you all have for each other is a major source of pride to me. This is what it's all about. People of all backgrounds coming together in a loving, compassionate, non-hostile environment. Many of you have privately reduced or eliminated dependency on drugs, pharma and alcohol. And that's a testament to your own strength, but well supported by people within the group. At least one member this year decided to give up the hook of religion after many extensive years of programming in that field. It's all brilliant stuff. All of it. The vision I had was to create a family. As such, as many of us have been cast away from the other world, which is a good thing, but it also creates worries of people being on their own, which leads to insecurities and a lack of trust of themselves. So the group was created to combat that and enable you all to feel part of something that's based on what is going on globally, and it really is something special to observe from my point of view. The Trust has had some year this year. We hammered quite a few of the cabal strongholds this year. Some will always point to the fact that we have not managed to release the funds yet, and I get that, it's a fair point. But the evidence shown and proven about the levels the clowns are going to prevent the public getting their share of the trust is indicative of the fears the clowns now exhibit. Just $1 out in the public and spent, and it's game over for them. We know it, and so do they. My role and input in the trust increased rapidly this year, which led me to moving from a nice warm climate to brass monkey temperatures. But that's okay, as I've seen more than sufficient to see that move was the right thing to do, and has reaped much more in the way of progression on a collective level at least. THI lost some people who had contributed to our group a lot over my time on the radio shows due to some misdemeanours or interference, whatever the case may be. But I would still like to thank them for their contributions. Chloe Erica Kirker, Victoria Plaistow, and also Lily Earthling. Of course, we lost a much-loved member this year, Luna Lisa Doherty, who finally succumbed to the many illnesses she had battled in the preceding years. We also lost a former guest on our show this year in what would be described as suspicious circumstances. given how much he knew about the multitude of government and military corruption, and also extensive knowledge of the operations around the Keenan team. In April this year, Peter Eyre finally lost his battle for life. A special thanks has to go out to Michael Jacquin, our webmaster extraordinaire. Oh my, how our website has developed this year. Plus he also does the YouTube channel uploadings as well, so big thanks to Michael. And then we come to the admins, who have been with me and THI from the start, and also from the Cosmic Voice days as well, until they were unceremoniously booted, which appears some people have forgotten. I don't. Their help and balance helps me get on with my role easier. So a special thanks to Holly Higgs-Peterson and James Godbeer for their roles in THI. And of course we're all wishing Holly well, to get well soon. And of course Holly also seamlessly, apart from a few time lapses, which become more frequent as the year goes on, smoothly took over the Facebook chat from Victoria this year. I want to thank some of my fellow hosts for the continued support of our show again this year, and hopefully we will be working even closer in the coming year. And that's Randy Morgan from the Off Planet Radio and Alan and Steve from the OYM Radio in Ireland. Special thanks to both of those groups. And the final thanks, I'm sure you will all join in with me, is to Kim. She's provided us with so much knowledge and understanding this year. Her tenacity of driving us all forward in an environment that is highly toxic and also threatening. She should be an example to us all. Never give up and keep fighting would be her mantra. Along with the private joke we have, I promise you, that's not happening. Said often to the clowns she speaks to, and it did not happen, did it? As she promised. So a big thanks for Kim and her tireless efforts. So this song is for Kim and all the other names mentioned in this section, and to all my members and listeners, I thank you all. That was my tribute to Kim and all the people who have all the people I mentioned, Holly, James, and all the listeners. That's my tribute to you, and I thank you all. So what can we expect in 2019? The words for 2019 is consolidation and validation, aligned with a steady but increase in awareness, progress, consciousness, and vision. The latter will come in a variety of ways as the year unfolds. With the many of the masks now visible and those now gone or eroding, our progress will increase again next year, with less obstacles to overcome as many were removed in the past year. The split of the two worlds will increase rapidly this year. Partnerships will again be under pressure for those in relationships who are not frequency balanced. Ear buzzing will increase. Your own awareness will increase. You will become more in tune with yourself, the environment, and nature. I suspect time will make less sense this year. Glitches will increase as more is phased in and other parts phased out. Dreams will get more vivid and more understandable if you take note of them. January could well be a testing on financial and global levels for us all. February and May could well be interesting months, and late November could be extraordinary should the 4-year loop news continue. His story will unravel much this year as more people start to question our real history. I expect some more discoveries to be made this coming year as the drip-fed disclosure rises again. An understanding will develop more over this statement made. Fact is fiction, and fiction is fact. The trust will continue to erode all the former control system with a mixture of teaching, knowledge and hammers. And we are hoping for a full breakthrough next year, or this year now, in terms of the funding and the start of the changes in preparation for the new decade. Messages to the clowns, factions, militaries, families, churches, politicians and agency people. Your time is up. You all know that deep down. You're running on a now defunct, failed harvesting program, of which you were all part of the feast. You thought your titles and badges all gave you the special ticket of survival. Well, I'm sorry to burst all your bubbles, but you were fooled more than we so-called commoners were. Oh my. You are slaves now to a system that's collapsed in on you. Whilst you waited for your titles, resources and payouts, some of us went about destroying the illusion world you all bought into, and went about systematically destroying your theatre of operations, none of which included violence, unless it was deemed necessary, and even then only in defence. A lesson for you all, mired in death and destruction. We crashed you to your knees without firing any weapons. Again, oh my. I stated on the show back in 2015, your control, wealth, assets and system would all be eroded, and you will be left with a few psychopaths with little left but fear and illusion. Whilst you all doubted, we delivered on our promises and predictions. You have two choices now: comply and fly straight, or die within your own failed system. Again, not by violence. You will not die from us via violence, but you will die internally by your own kind and ultimately your own arrogance and stupidity. Like we have said repeatedly, when you are ready to talk sense and about us all, we will be there ready for you. Until then, enjoy your steady but increasing demise. TikTok. So what about me? Well, it's been a testing year in some ways, as you all know, with my relationship sadly ending, and also my migration from warm to freezing. But it's also been a year of tremendous personal growth and knowledge. A year of many confirms of what I'd said in previous shows, in previous years also, all coming home with more clarity. The shows have developed quite a bit over this year, based on all your comments, and it is enough for me to realise the value of my work. For those of you who keep telling me I don't give myself enough credit, I do see that now, and I have realised that more this year of the impact THI shows has had on you all. I still get bombarded with the Langley spy programme known as the Bloody Cat by many, but it's all good fun. And I'm hoping for an increase in curiosity this year. Stupid bloody cats. They were all ribbing me last night on the Zoom chat as well, so I'm just giving it back a bit, you know. I must all thank you all for your contributions this year, last year now, especially those who were able to contribute to my Patreon. I am very humbled by all of your generosity. Thursdays, for many of you now, has become your favourite day. What will he reveal this week? And while some things get repeated a few times as a reminder, I have managed to keep the shows fresh with some new material, ideas or ponderings each week, and that will continue into this year with an added more solution-based narrative, and maybe I have one or two more special shows up my sleeve for this coming year. Like I said before, my favourite shows of the year was from Russia with Love shows. A lot went into them. I must have covered 20 different topics and about 20 different regions of the world in that show. And it triggers up the lies we've all been fed. People on the internet now talking more about Tartaria. Mr. Putin asking all Russians to study native languages of the past, and in particular the Rus, in the past 2 months. And whether it was because of the shows or not, it doesn't matter. The message is getting out globally now, and that's all that really matters. I care not to be the biggest, bestest or highest rating show. We hardly advertise the show really anyway. I care that people get the bigger picture and a better understanding of what life and the show is all about. And those that do listen formulate a vision of moving forward with it, not mired in the past. The past is gone. The past has lied. The past has cheated. And the past has failed. And it's up to us all to create a new one, a new path of progression, one of harmony, one of peace, one of love, compassion, one of fairness, and one mired in need, not greed. I thank you all dearly for being on this journey with me. It gives me great pleasure and pride to watch the growth of you all, individually and more importantly, collectively. I wish you all a happy new year, and may you continue to thrive and prosper together with our will, moral fortitude, compassion and desire to be the change, allied with the increased source energy and manifest abilities. We, the ones mad enough to think we can change the world, will be the ones that do. Kim, I and the team will continue to teach the world a new tune, one not mired in lies, crime and corruption, and towards sharing wealth out with all people, starting in particular with the many who don't have the 5 basic necessities in life of food, clean water, shelter, energy and clothing. They must be a priority. We in the so-called Western world, by and large, live like kings in comparison. But we will not neglect the fact that all our lifestyles are being eroded as well. There is an extraordinary number of projects all planned and all ready to roll out once clowns are sufficiently removed from the arena. These projects will change many aspects of our life, particularly from a financial point of view, but we have to get ourselves in tune with us and others on an internal level. That is far more important than the external pieces of paper, which ultimately is a control system after all. We now have the new grounding and centering document linked with the shielding document, plus descriptions of how to counteract psychic attacks, all available on the website. Please use them. They are there for your benefit and they do work. You may require to ramp it up this year, as they will descend into chaos, as the gap between their world and ours becomes wider. Rejoice in the new year and embrace a new beginning. You are your own change and the wider change. This is a long-term gain process, and patience will be required on all levels. Learn to focus on that which is important, being the best you can be in and of yourself. And if you falter, you will always have THI to be there for you to prop you back up. It's what we do. A shift of mindset is imperative going forward, and we have covered that in many of the shows. Whilst clowns hold on tightly to the old world of greed, death and destruction, we will press forward with our world of need, life and rebuilding. There is no grey area in this conquest. It's thrive or die. Laying the foundations of a new way of living, not surviving. That non-conducive existence has gone on for far too long. A life where our children can learn, thrive, play and create, not dumbed down, crushed, vaccinated and discarded like some kind of psychopathic plaything. Quite frankly, we've all had enough of that shit. So I wish goodbye to 2018 and look forward to 2019. I will be with you all the way through it. I hope you have a happy, healthy, thriving and exciting new year. We have much to look forward to. I pondered long on which song to finish off 2018's review. So many of you liked the musical pieces throughout the year. And that was a kind of difficult choice to make, which one to pick. But I've settled on this one. And it's a question we all must ask ourselves, and one we must answer with full truth, full honour and full integrity. If it hasn't been enough for some of you, you will all have time to correct it. It is the big key for us all to move forward. Remember that above everything else. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity show and the end of the 2018 year review. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.